Your name, please.
Mitch Thomason,
How do you spell your last name?
Thomason.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a lieutenant with the St. Croix County Sheriff's Office.
How many years have you been a law enforcement officer?
Over 20.
What are your duties as the lieutenant with the St. Croix County Sheriff's Department, generally?
Supervising the patrol unit.
Do you recall July 30th of 2022?
Yes.
Did you get called out due to the Apple River stabbing incident?
Yes.
Were you out in the field doing work?
I was not working that day. I got a page out for our SWAT team was paged out for that incident.
As a lieutenant, is that something that you're typically involved in?
Yes.
All right. Did you get dispatched to a particular area?
The page had the initial incident location. So when I responded to the sheriff's office to grab our drone. And then while I was en route, after I got the drone, while I was en route to Somerset, the updated location of near the rapids is where I responded to.
And when you say the rapids, is that by Village Park?
Yes.
You said you were off duty, but when you responded, were you in uniform,
Correct, yes.
carrying a sidearm?
Yes.
Where did you first go?
I responded to basically the east side of the river underneath the walking bridge, which is accessible by vehicle by turning off Main Street or Highway 35 to the south and following a trail.
Had you been given at that point a picture of what the suspect looked like?
Yes.
Do you recall, as you sit here today, what he was wearing in the photograph that you were given, or the picture?
The initial description was a 50s something, white male, no shirt, swim trunks with a gold or a necklace chain. The picture was similar to that.
At the time that you arrived to the area, had the suspect been taken in custody yet?
No.
Because of that, did you use caution when you approached?
Yes,
Did you draw your firearm?
I did.
Explain what happened once you got to the Village Park area.
So I parked my squad, exited. I had my handgun drawn but pointed down. There was a group approaching me, walking on the footpath. What struck me as odd is one of the people in that group was wearing a long sleeve button-up shirt, hat, and glasses. Didn't fit in with the rest of the group. I could see just a little bit of a necklace. I felt that was possibly the suspect that we were looking for. However, I knew a large portion of officers were coming down behind me. So I passed that group to make sure there wasn't, just to rule out that there wasn't anybody else that matched the description. And then behind me, I heard someone yell, that was the person.
Was the defendant part of that group that walked past you as you were going down?
Yes, he was the one wearing the button-up long sleeve shirt, hat, and sunglasses.
Did he make any attempt to flag you down or talk to you?
Nobody did. Nobody looked at me as I walked past with my gun drawn.
How many seconds after you walked past did some other law enforcement person recognize him?
Probably within 5 to 10 seconds, because at that point it was a civilian with a baseball bat that yelled, that's the suspect, or that's the guy.
Did you see the civilian with the baseball bat?
Yes.
Did he attack the defendant in any fashion?
No, he just pointed at the subject.
At the time this happened, did you have a recollection of how many law enforcement personnel were in that general area at the Village Park?
Everybody was still responding as the suspect was taken into custody. It was one of our deputies, Deputy Benjamin Trebian, and a Polk County deputy, and then I was standing there. So in the immediate area surrounding the person himself was 3 of us, but it was constantly people showing up, so I don't know a static number of the initially.
Once he was, we'll strike that. Were you wearing a body cam that day?
Yes.
Was it recording your activities at Village Park?
Yes.
Did you at some point make contact with Mr. Miu after he had been arrested or detained?
Yes. After he was handcuffed, I escorted him to my squad, placed him in my squad, grabbed my transport belt, just knowing with the incident that this would be a timely process, and then switched out his handcuffs with a transport belt so his hands were handcuffed in front of his body instead of behind, and then placed him in my car.
Judge, can you approach real quick?
Yes.
Mr. Smestad.
Lieutenant Thompson, are you aware that your body cam is located on a flash drive that our offices have been holding on to?
Yes.
If I told you it was marked as Exhibit 9, would that make sense to you?
Yes.
We're going to be playing a portion of your body cam from Exhibit 9. I'm not going to ask you questions about it. I'm not going to have you comment about it. We're just going to play it, okay?
Okay.
And we're starting at the 2016 mark.
Want to advise him he's under arrest? Have we done that yet? Last I heard was
Nothing that's going to poke me, prick me, stick me, hurt me in any way.
Absolutely.
So right now you're being placed under arrest, okay? You're being placed under arrest for a homicide and attempted homicide.
Is that your body cam?
Yes.
That's your voice in the background?
Correct.
And we stopped the judge at 2036.
Thank you.
After informing Mr. Miu what he was charged with, nothing further, Judge.
Mr. Nelson?
Mr. Thomason. Morning.
Morning.
I'm going to ask you some questions about your arrival at the Village Park where the exit is there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You observed, can I get that exhibit one time again?
One time.
Yes, please. 11 maybe, both of them? Thank you. When you observed, we saw the video here, just a 20-second clip when you were, do you remember what he looked like there?
Yes.
He didn't have sunglasses on in that picture, correct?
Correct.
He didn't have a hat on in that picture, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 110, and it's been published before, okay? I want to ask you some questions about that. Permission to publish that? You seen this photo before, sir?
I don't think so.
And I know that, Elmo, there's a bit of a glare. Are you able to see it, or you want me to give it to you in your hand?
That's fine.
Do you see to the left there a person you now recognize as Nicolae Miu?
Yes.
He's in that photo wearing the shirt that he was wearing when you arrested him?
Yes.
He's wearing the necklace that he was wearing when you arrested him?
Well, without confirming it, but it appears to be the same, yes.
He's wearing a necklace? Agreed?
Yes.
He's wearing sunglasses? Agreed?
Yes.
He's wearing a hat? Agreed?
Yes.
And I think you can even see like the sandals? Agreed?
Mine is cut off on the bottom, but
Miss, you see it there just on the bottom?
it appears so.
So in the photo, Exhibit 110, he appears to be wearing the same 6 items of clothing that you saw him wearing when you saw him walking up from the river. Is that right?
In a different manner, but yes.
The shirt was buttoned up, correct?
Yes.
But other than that, it's the same clothing, correct?
Yes, that appears.
And obviously, he has a different expression on his face at the beginning of the trip than he does at the end of the trip, right?
Correct.
You, when you're back to the village park where the exit is, okay? When you approach there, you said you drew your gun out, correct?
Yes.
Obviously, that's for lots of reasons, but particularly safety. Agreed?
Yes.
Your safety first, correct?
Yes.
And then the safety of everybody else around there, correct?
Yes.
Whether they be victims, witnesses, suspects, citizens, you're concerned about everybody's safety, correct?
Yes.
And that's why at that point, even though there's not an immediate threat to you, you have your weapon out, correct?
Yes.
That's what you've been trained to do sometimes, correct?
Yes.
Be prepared, correct?
Yes.
Did you, in that moment, you had information, correct?
Yes.
Did you have a particular fear, or is this just, in that instance, were you fearful? Is that why you drew out your weapon?
If I understand correctly, I wasn't responding to how I felt being in danger. I was responding to what the information I was given and to conduct my job properly.
There might be danger. The safest thing to do here is to have my gun drawn.
Yes.
And when it was drawn, again, I'm just trying to gather the facts, not being critical. Do you understand that?
Mm-hmm.
How, when you draw it, do you know, we've all watched shows, and so sometimes I see somebody pointing a firearm, sometimes I see them holding it down by their side, sometimes it's with one hand, sometimes it's with two hands. As you come down and you make visual assessment that Mr. Miu is there, you don't know at the time that he's Mr. Miu, but now we do. I want to ask about how you're holding the gun then. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can you tell us that?
Yes, it was pointed down towards the ground.
Okay, one hand, two hands?
One hand.
And then as you had it, one hand down towards the ground, you're walking past people, correct?
Yes.
And one of those people that you walk past is Mr. Miu, correct?
Yes.
And about how far are you? 1 foot, 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet?
I'd say within, let's call it 8 to 10 feet.
Okay. And do you see him standing, walking, jogging, running? What do you see him doing?
So the group that he was with, there was maybe 1 or 2 people between him and I, but they're all walking straight from where I came from, past me and all looking straight ahead.
Okay.
I look at them, see him, and then I'm scanning the area.
So Mr. Miu was with other people and they were all walking at the same pace, correct?
Yes.
Fair to say it would just be a normal human walking pace?
Yes.
You, when you walk past, your thoughts are, that might be the guy, correct?
Yes. Similar.
But you also knew that other law enforcement was coming, correct?
Yes.
And in that moment, you made the choice, not critical again, just you made the choice to say, I'm going to keep walking to see if the guy might be down the river and we'll let the next group of law enforcement deal with this person that might be the guy. Fair to say?
Yes. So my decision was predicated purely on the fact that I knew more officers were arriving.
Yes.
If I knew I was down there by myself, what I believed him to be more than likely the suspect, I would have taken him into custody right away.
Sure. Or I imagine if you believed that he was in that moment posing some sort of immediate danger, you'd address that, correct?
Correct.
But for what you were like, that might be the guy, your danger assessment wasn't heightened based upon your observations of him, correct?
I was not being attacked or threatened to be attacked. I think that's what you mean.
You didn't find a reason at that point to say, even if I think that's the guy, I need to address him right now, right? I'm imagining that's because you're like, in that moment, even if he's the guy, you didn't think he was so dangerous that you needed to address him.
Well, based on what we're told, there's the danger of what was reported.
Absolutely.
But I also need to make sure that I don't mistake somebody else and get ambushed or miss a potential another suspect. So that's why I was looking just to double check, if that makes sense.
It doesn't, but I'm not a law enforcement officer and it doesn't
Okay.
need to, so I appreciate that. There's lots of factors that you're considering, correct?
Yes,
In whatever reason, in that moment, you decided to walk past him and let the next group of officers deal with him, correct?
yes,
And then they did deal with him, correct?
yes.
And then you turned around and observed that, correct?
I turned around and assisted.
And by the time you turned around to assist, they were dealing with it, correct?
Yes,
And Mr. Miu was not running away, correct?
correct.
He was cooperating, right?
Yes,
From what you saw, he complied, correct?
correct.
And at some point, you decided, you saw that he was cuffed with his hands behind his back, correct?
Yes,
That can be an uncomfortable position for some people, agreed?
yes,
And because of that, you were like, this might be a long time, I'm gonna go get, what'd you call it, a belt?
transport belt.
What is that?
It's a name for it, but it's a Velcro belt, has a D-ring in the front, so then the handcuffs go through the D-ring. So basically, for any extended period of time that someone's restrained, their hands can be in front of them, but then they're secured at their belt line. So if someone wanted to resist or try to do something, their hands are locked at their waist, but it's more comfortable position for a longer duration.
And you knew essentially he was going to be placed inside of a squad car where he would be sitting down, correct?
Yes,
And sitting down with your hands cuffed behind your back can be painful, correct?
yes,
So that was the purpose, and you're putting him in this belt is for safety and comfort, right?
safety and then comfort, just knowing that the investigation might be lengthy.
Sure. I mean, and I'm not critical of your considering both. I just want to make sure that it's not just safety, agreed?
Correct.
It was an additional, you're wearing these things out and saying, I got to do this, got to make sure that he's comfortable and can sit there that long, correct?
Yes,
During that time, when you go get your belt, you come back, you're up close with Mr. Miu, is that right? You assist with putting the transport belt on him?
yes.
You're like in his personal space, correct?
Yep, correct.
And in that time, he doesn't do anything to you, correct?
No,
You agree?
yes, correct. He did not do anything to
That
me.
was a poor question on my fault. And because of your job, you have to be essentially in his personal space, right?
Yes,
And when you were in his personal space in that setting, I'm sure you're trying to both keep everybody safe, right?
yes,
And as part of that, you want to make sure that the person whose space you're in is comfortable, correct?
it's one of the considerations.
Yeah, you don't want to get in somebody's personal space without kind of making sure it's safe for everybody, right?
Yes,
And part of that is you're making that person feel safe even though you're in their space.
correct.
And you did that, right?
I believe so.
And you were safe, correct?
Yes,
Mr. Miu didn't do anything to you, agreed?
he did not.
And when you're in that space, you have an opportunity to make observations of him, correct?
Yes,
Including to smell, correct?
I can, yes.
Because sometimes in cases you've involved, investigation involving matters of alcohol, correct?
Yes,
And one of the things that you can use is your nose to smell if it seems like somebody was consuming alcohol in some way, correct?
yes,
And if you gather that information, you document it in some way, correct?
yes,
And you might pass it on to another person, correct?
yes,
And you might do further testing, correct?
yes,
You didn't document, pass it on, or do further testing regarding Mr. Miu's alcohol use, agreed?
I did not, no.
And the reason you didn't is you had no reason in that moment to suspect that he was somehow intoxicated, right?
Yes, and it was also not a detail that I was concerned about or part of something that I would have been a part of at that point.
Sure. Obviously, if you smelled it, you'd have noted it, remembered it, told somebody, right?
Yes,
So what we can gather from your not noting it, telling anybody, is you didn't smell it.
correct.
During that process, there's also you gained information about there's a citizen out there with a baseball bat, is that right?
Yes,
And this is the citizen that essentially pointed out Mr. Miu to law enforcement, right?
yes.
And do you know if that citizen, we understand he wasn't attacked. I'm not trying to imply that. Do you know where that citizen was in relation to Mr. Miu?
His group hadn't approached that citizen, but they were walking in towards that direction of where the citizen was. But that citizen was also near law enforcement as well.
Was that citizen approaching Mr. Miu?
I heard him yell. When I turned, he was just standing and pointing. And then I was only probably 20 feet away.
Did you come to learn that that citizen's name is Carl Schilling?
I never spoke to the citizen or identified him. Somebody else did. So I don't know who he was identified as.
Okay. There was information exchanged between law enforcement, amongst law enforcement, in the presence of Mr. Miu about this guy with the baseball bat. Is that right?
I guess I don't know.
Okay. On your body cam, there's a time when I think we hear you and others talking about the baseball bat while Mr. Miu is right there. Make sense?
Okay.
Let me just play that, all right? I think it is Exhibit 9 at the 248 mark. Permission to play Exhibit 9. I actually paused it at the 247 mark until the 305 mark. Oh, I'm not hooked up. That's why it's not working. Sorry about that, yes. Can you press play, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about this.
But bear in mind, lunch is here, so
I got, okay. I'm pressing pause because I didn't have the volume on. Pressing play.
Continue to staging point 22. Westfield.
The guy with the baseball bat was just responding to the sighting. Yep.
I just played from about 247 to 305. That was your body cam?
Yes.
And that was you again doing the transport belt on Mr. Miu?
Yes, I was securing the handcuffs.
And that was Mr. Miu looking around, correct?
Yes.
While the police were talking about the guy with the baseball bat.
Yes.
That's all.
Mr. Mestad, anything else? No. All right. Thank you, Lieutenant. You are free to go.